In springtime, Rusty loves to visit a faraway place. It's filled with bluebells. The air smells sweet, and Rusty thinks there is no better place to be.
And it's certainly an area we, the audience, haven't been exposed to yet. It's a branch line, but we don't know who runs it. Neither did Rusty, actually. He also noticed his driver was acting unusual. According to him, the branch line he just saw needed a tank engine. No one had any ideas what to do. That is until Rusty entered the picture.
Rusty had an idea. Can you help me find another engine? You mean on the other railway? Yes, where you found Oliver. And Rusty explained everything. I'd like to help, but these days it's only diesels that go there. So that's where I'll go. Take care.
Well, at least Douglas knows it won't be an easy one. Although I guess he forgot Rusty is a diesel? So it's not like Rusty could get into more trouble than he did. He said it himself, the other railway was smothered in diesels. So yeah, I don't see the problem. Rusty is the perfect Trojan horse. I'm beginning to see a very interesting trend here though, by the way, but I won't say until the end.
Rusty told the driver all about the plan. And that night he came back to the shed. The manager says he'll make a home for a Bluebell engine if you find one. Right, said Rusty. We'll find one tomorrow.
So they set off on their new mission, and boy did it take some time. Being that Rusty was no express engine, nor standard gauge, meant it was going to be a while before they got anywhere. I'm actually surprised he didn't have to stop and refuel, being this little orange box probably didn't have much of a tank to begin with. But hey, at least he got the approval from the manager. When they reached the Vickerstown goods depot, he was discovered quite quickly.
Who are you? I'm a shed and sidings inspection diesel. Have you any engines in the shed? No, none. Then what about the sidings? One. We have one. Then I'll just go and inspect.
Sure as heck he's a brave diesel. All those other engines lined up and such, although we all know who they are. That and all the scrapped models of the engines, isn't that, friendly? When Rusty got to the siding, he discovered a yellow battered tank engine who was looking none too happy with his situation. I guess the other diesels didn't care much, though. Then again, maybe that commanding voice directing Rusty around intimidates them too. What do I know?
Excuse me, said Rusty. Do you like bluebells? The engine looked startled. Yes, bluebells are beautiful. Then you're soon going to see lots of them because I'm getting you out of here.
And just like that, people started the smuggling process of the ready-to-be-scrapped engine. Even his driver, who was originally hanging out in the cab, got things rolling too. I wonder why he didn't bother doing something to try and get out before. I guess he was just keeping the engine somewhat happy until he was scrapped, which is rather unfortunate. That is until Rusty came along. And shortly thereafter, they were all sneaking out before anyone could react.
Where is he going? They hissed. Just down the line, replied Rusty. And they chuffered quickly away. We've done it, whispered Rusty. We're over the border and back on our own railway.
That's a nice little theme played right there. And it's so uplifting in tone as compared to the background depicted earlier. And Douglas was the one worried about Rusty being careful? If anything, Douglas had it worse. Not only did he get stopped by one of the employees there, but he too could have been scrapped for smuggling contraband out of the area. But here we had Rusty, a legit sidings inspection diesel. So his clearance was more or less authorized and had valid credentials. And he too got spotlighted when he was leaving, but they moved their cabs a lot faster, I'd say. Good thing nobody cares in this universe when their items are stolen right from under their noses.
You lucky old engine. You've been saved by the Bluebell Railway. And my friend Rusty. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for Rusty. Now the little engine is as happy as can be and helps all the passengers who visit at Bluebell time. His name is Stepney, but everyone calls him the Bluebell Engine.
What an enjoyable episode. This was a better change in pace for a number of reasons. The first being that we are sharing a story between narrow and standard gauge engines. We also got another episode on our trusty rusty orange box. And this time we don't have to worry about what timestamp this falls into place. Rusty has shown time and time again that he'll go above and beyond his calling. And that's an admirable trait. But for him to do this, especially since he's a tiny little thing, it's rather amazing. And this is the trend I wanted to bring up. I know how in the last story I was beating the crap out of the narrative saying how Rheneas' story wasn't that different from Skarloey's? Well, this story isn't that different from that of when Douglas saved Oliver. But the justification for this story deserving high marks is for the reason of how the story came about. And I've mentioned it before. In Season 1, Edward was considered useless, but it was his drivers who gave him a second chance and showed everyone he was useful. Then Season 2 came along, where Edward gave Trevor a second chance after being considered useless. In Season 3, Edward then passed his story to Douglas, who then in return saved Oliver, who was considered useless. And now in Season 4, we have Douglas passing his experience on to Rusty, who saves Stepney. I'm pretty sure I didn't have to go to this length for you, the viewer, to understand my point, but the fact that this kind of act has worked its way down every season blows my mind. It should tell the audience by this time that every good deed has an effect and can spread even more good deeds. I love it. I'm just curious how long this trend will go for. Another plus to this entry was the introduction of Stepney, our newest character to the show. Although he hasn't done much here, there's sure to be more about him coming up. Which now leads me to the music. By far, this has the best arrangements heard in a while. At the start, we heard Rusty's full theme instead of the small tidbits heard in earlier showings. And later on, his theme appears again, but in different tempos and keys. The other two motifs to be played was the rescue cue as Stepney and Rusty escape, and lastly was Stepney's theme, which is quite the jolly one. Finally, for locations, we only had a couple familiar spots. Rheneas' Viaduct is shown, along with the Vickerstown Goods Depot, although there we did get a few more angles as what goes on in this area. Like those skeletal remains of other steamies? Ew. But the new places are also great to see, like Stepney's branch line, the Bluebell Valley, and the Vickerstown Bridge, with that giant moon in the background. Next episode is Thomas and Stepney. Thanks for watching.